I was talking to Larry Summers this morning, and there's nothing inevitable about a recession.
What I would say is that not only is a recession not inevitable, but I think that a lot of people are underestimating those strengths and the resilience of the American economy.
Inflation obviously is happening globally. A recession is not inevitable. The president really wants to have a steady and stable recovery.
So a recession is not inevitable, sure, but when you look at the strengths and some of the challenges, what's your assessment of the likelihood?
Victor, it's looking more and more likely because the Fed keeps on raising interest rates. In other words, there's nothing about the economy per se that inevitably leads to a recession right now. But if the Fed, in trying to head off inflation, continues to raise interest rates as fast as it has and as fast as it seems to be heading in the direction of raising them even more, then the economy is going to go into recession.
Yeah. Matt just mentioned this Fed official, Fed Reserve Governor Christopher Waller, who said over the weekend that he would back another 75 basis point increase at their meeting in late July. Are they that far behind that even without seeing some of the major implications of the most recent increase, the largest in 35 years, that they can project ahead that they'll need it in 5 weeks?
No, it's very, very difficult to do. The Fed interest rate policy is not an exact science, which is one reason why we shouldn't simply rely on the Fed to control inflation. This gets to the core issue here. There are a lot of other things that we can and should be doing to reduce prices, reduce the pressure of price increases. Why do we only rely on the Fed? For example, getting pharmaceutical prices down. We could do that because the government has huge bargaining leverage over the pharmaceutical companies. Also, gas prices. We could pass a windfall profits tax and take some of the heat off of these gas prices. Remember, these companies are enjoying record profits right now. Why should they be raising their prices? Why not have a windfall profits tax, use the money to eliminate gas taxes on both the federal and at the state level? We could do many, many things right now rather than rely solely on the Federal Reserve Board to raise interest rates so much and so fast that it does exactly what we had in the early 80s, and that is plunge us into a deep recession.
You're talking in large part about things that require congressional approval. It's not clear that there are 10 Republican votes for a windfall tax on oil companies. There are even 50 Democratic votes in the Senate for it. Independent of that, talk to me about the gas tax, federal gas tax. President Biden said that he hopes to have a decision by the end of the week. There are some Democrats who say it's a stunt. Others support it. Where do you stand?
Well, I think it would be helpful. It's not going independently and of itself to do the trick. It's one step in the right direction. There are other things that the president could do as well, and we've talked about some of them. I think it's very important to understand, though, and the president really can use his bully pulpit here and needs to use his bully pulpit, because one of the factors we have not yet talked about is corporations, big profitable corporations pushing higher prices because they can use the cover of inflation. Now, don't get me wrong. The basic problem here, and it's been a problem all along in terms of this inflation, is you've got, coming out of the pandemic, huge demand, pent-up demand, and you have supply of all kinds of goods and services trying to catch up with that demand. Very difficult for an economy, a global economy coming out of a pandemic to suddenly come out of comatose, basically a kind of comatose period. So it's going to take time, and until we get there, there is going to be inflation. But meanwhile, you've got very big corporations that dominate most markets, most of their industries, that are pushing up prices. There is no reason for that. There ought to be antitrust enforcement. There ought to be, and the president ought to be taking these companies into the White House and saying, if you don't stop raising your prices, and you don't have to, I know you don't, because I know how profitable you are, then we're going to slam you with antitrust cases. We're going to stop your monopolies. We're going to reduce your market power. I'm going to try to get a windfall profits tax.
But we know that is something that is happening in Congress. We'll find out the president has also reached out to some of these oil companies. We know he sent the letters to the CEOs asking them about their profits and the the wells that they are not using. Former Labor Secretary Robert Reich, thank you very much.